Is it available?
There's two companies that have announced that this month they will start. One was supposed to start last week. I haven't swiped my card, so I don't know if it's gone through yet. But I assume that it'll start. I think part of the challenge is that there's still not a lot of infrastructure in Cuba for credit cards. So there's certain places, hotels, larger restaurants, and maybe some supermarkets, but you're still not going to be swiping your card for a taxi like you do in the US or at a small shop where you're buying souvenirs.
You are an American that came to Cuba and fell in love with this country and decided to stay. But what's the result, what's the footprint that leaves this country in all those Americans that you bring here?
I would say that the takeaway most of the time tends to be the Cuban people. I think that Americans, when they come and they meet Cubans, and they might have a certain vision of what they think Cubans are going to be, and I think what they find, they're very impressed by how healthy, educated, intelligent, talented, and creative Cubans are. And despite challenging times, especially over the last 2 decades, they find Cubans that are smiling, that are dancing, that share, that treat people well. And so I think most Americans leave incredibly impressed with the Cuban people and the potential that this country has.
Do you see things moving forward? I mean, we saw President Barack Obama and Raul Castro on December 17th. Afterwards, the implementation of the decisions that were announced by Barack Obama towards the relations between Cuba and the United States. Within 2 rounds of talks between the government of Cuba and the United States, but there is still some obstacles like the inclusion of Cuba on the list of state sponsors of terrorism and the financing situation of the Cuban embassy. The Cuban interest section, which we expect to become an embassy very, very soon, like the American interest section in Cuba, which at least is the will of both governments. But do you see, besides that, things politically moving towards an approach between the two countries?
I'm very optimistic. I think that a decision was made at the highest level in both countries by both presidents that they wanted to move forward on this. I think there'll be obstacles. There's obviously a small opposition in the US Congress that'll make things difficult. And then there's some elements, as you mentioned, the banking issue and the embargo as a whole that complicates things. But I think the spirit of the 2 rounds, and specifically the last round of negotiations, Josefina and Vidal and Roberta Jacobson, their statements at the end, very positive, and I think there's a disposition on both sides to move forward. And I think especially on the United States side, for the first time, the business community and the population, US population at large, is